Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This meeting will be broadcast simultaneously in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Mandarin. Before we begin, I will walk you through the translation features of the Zoom platform. Locate the interpretation icon at the bottom right of your screen. Select your language preference. Select mute original audio to avoid hearing audio in both languages. This is really important. You'll want to locate the interpretation icon that's at the bottom right of your screen. Select your language preference. Select mute original audio to avoid hearing audio in both languages. Again, this is really important.
And what we'll do now is we'll have our interpreters read those instructions in the 3 other languages. So we'll kick it over to our Spanish interpreter first. Okay, Paul, do you want to read those in Vietnamese for us? And then our Mandarin interpreter. All right. Okay, well, Sheldra, I think we can get started with the main part of our program.
All right, thank you, Emily. And I do want to again welcome you to the Harris County Flood Control District's Maintenance Matters virtual public meeting. My name is Sheldra Brigham, and I'm with the Flood Control District's communications team, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. This virtual meeting is being offered by the Flood Control District to share information with the community about Flood Control District Proposition A, which will appear on the November 5th ballot. Community engagement is very important to us, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this meeting. The purpose of this meeting is simply to provide education and information about flood control districts, maintenance efforts, and the impact of Flood Control District Proposition A in Harris County. I'll also explain ways that you can share your priorities for maintenance efforts and your comments and questions about Flood Control District Proposition A. Residents will also have the opportunity to submit a comment or question through the Flood Control District's webpage at hcfcd.org Proposition A. But for right now, let's take a look at the agenda for our meeting. First, we're going to share some background information with you on the Harris County Flood Control District, and then we'll present information on what Flood Control District Proposition A is, why it's on the ballot, and how the funds will be used. Next, we'll dig a little deeper into the major types of maintenance work the Flood Control District performs. Our presentation will be followed by a question and answer session with Flood Control District experts. Attendees will be able to submit comments through the Q&A feature in the Zoom platform, and any comments not addressed during the Q&A session will receive a response from the Flood Control District as soon as possible after our meeting. And again, you'll always have the opportunity to submit a comment or question through the Flood Control District's website at hcfcd.org/prop-A. I'll now turn things over to Emily Waddell for an overview of the Flood Control District and Proposition A. Emily?
Thank you, Sheldra. And thank you all again so much for taking time out of your day to join us. I know many of you are interested in joining this conversation because you're interested in flood risk reduction efforts in Harris County, and we really appreciate your engagement on the topic. Now, many Houstonians and area residents mark time by storm events, whether that's Allison, Tax Day, Memorial Day, Harvey, or others. And the reality is that flooding is Harris County's #1 natural disaster. And our work at the Flood Control District focuses on mitigating that risk. But before we dive into some of that, I want to set the stage with some background on our region. First, as you all know, we are a very large and very populated county. Nearly 5 million residents call Harris County home, and that number is growing every year. Our geography also lends itself to flooding. We're relatively flat with minimal elevation changes between our highest and lowest areas, and our clay-based soils don't naturally soak up water very easily. And as you well know, it rains a lot here. So on average, we get about 48 inches of precipitation each year that impacts our region. So because of those issues and in response to major flood events in the 20s and the 30s, the Harris County Flood Control District was established back in 1937. We are a special purpose district created by the Texas legislature, and Harris County Commissioners Court serves as our board of directors. We work really closely with partners at the federal, state, and local levels to advance our work across the region. Now, the Flood Control District is the only local entity with the sole focus of countywide flood risk reduction. Our mission is to plan and deliver effective flood risk reduction projects that are guided by community and natural values, all while maintaining our infrastructure. We're unique regionally and even nationally because our scope includes both capital work, where we plan and implement projects to add capacity to our network, and maintenance, where we focus on ensuring our network is functioning as intended. There are a lot of entities that have responsibility for one or for the other, but the Flood Control District was designed to do it all, and that's really where our work sits. Now, as I mentioned, we're the only entity in our region with the sole purpose of countywide flood risk reduction, but other organizations play a really important role in that overall picture. When rain falls on your roof, it flows through several jurisdictions, such as streets and drains maintained by the Harris County Engineering Department, a municipal utility district, or a city like the city of Houston, before it flows into a larger channel, creek, or bayou that the Flood Control District owns and maintains. Inside neighborhoods, as you'll see on the left side of this illustration, storm sewers and roadside ditches collect stormwater runoff, and they start the process of moving it away from homes and streets. Storm sewers and those roadside ditches are the responsibility of the underlying municipality. The larger bayous and channels that take the collected water and move it through our drainage system to Galveston Bay are the responsibility of the Flood Control District. And you can see those on the right side of your screen. Often we partner with Harris County precincts, utility districts, and other partners to add recreational amenities such as trails to our infrastructure network. That includes things along stormwater detention basins and channels. Now, the Flood Control District's network of flood risk reduction infrastructure spans across 23 watersheds in Harris County. We maintain about 2,500 linear miles of channels and tributaries, and that's about the distance from Los Angeles to New York, if you're looking for a driving comparison. The Flood Control District also maintains more than 280 stormwater detention basins, which are designed to store excess stormwater during heavy rain events until that water can drain safely into channels and ultimately to Galveston Bay. Each of the different types of infrastructure in our broader portfolio requires a different type and a different level of maintenance to ensure they're working appropriately. Now, we do our work through a variety of funding sources. On the capital side of our organization, our largest source of funding currently is the 2018 bond program, which was overwhelmingly approved by voters back in 2018 in response to the devastation from Hurricane Harvey. That program includes $2.5 billion in local investment, and we've coupled that with $2.7 billion in partnership funding. That has generated more than $5.2 billion for flood risk reduction projects across Harris County. In addition, our teams at the Flood Control District pursue grants and partnerships with federal, state, and local entities to fund our capital work. On the maintenance side, our work is largely funded by a dedicated ad valorem property tax. Since we're a special purpose entity, the Flood Control District has its own dedicated tax rate. This is separate from other local taxing entities and from the rest of Harris County. Now I want to talk a little bit about Harris County Flood Control District Proposition A, which is what we're here to share information about today, and which will appear on ballots for Harris County voters this election cycle. Now, earlier this year, Harris County Commissioners Court directed the Flood Control District to conduct an analysis of deferred maintenance across our network. This chart summarizes some of the key data points from that analysis. Now, first, the orange line near the top of this chart shows the amount of acreage maintained by the Flood Control District. You can see that this number has nearly doubled over the last 25 years, and this goes back to about 2000. Over that same period, the lighter blue lines that sort of go up and down show that capital spending has been strong. As a reminder, that capital spending is spending on new projects or added capacity to our overall network, as well as the legwork that we need to make those projects a reality. And then at the bottom, you can see the trend line for maintenance spending. That funding, which is generated by tax revenue, has been largely flat over that same 25-year period. Now, that increase in acreage and capital spending, coupled with the flat maintenance spending, has led to a backlog of deferred maintenance for the organization. In response to these conversations, this past August, Harris County Commissioners Court unanimously approved an item to take the Flood Control District's dedicated tax rate to voters to consider an increase. On the ballot, this will appear as Harris County Flood Control District Proposition A. The proposition includes language raising the Flood Control District's tax rate by 1.581 cents per $100 of valuation. Voters can select for or against on the ballot in response to the proposition. But I want to talk a little bit more about what that potential increase would mean for Harris County residents and for the Flood Control District. Now, I mentioned that as a special purpose district, we have that dedicated tax rate. The 1.581 cent increase would amount to approximately $60 per year for the average homeowner in Harris County. On the flip side of that, this increase would generate approximately $100 million in new revenue to fund maintenance work across Flood Control District infrastructure. Now, this work spans Harris County. The revenue generated would go into the Flood Control District's maintenance account, which is dedicated to funding maintenance work and controlled by our organization. The Flood Control District's maintenance work falls into 4 major categories, and any potential increases in funding would follow these same buckets. Each of these categories are important to ensuring our infrastructure network is functioning as it was designed to. Our goal is to have our channels and our network in what we call an ever-ready state, meaning they're always ready for the next storm. But instead of telling you about all of these categories myself, I want to turn it over to the experts who do this work every day. So we'll start with preventative maintenance, and I'll turn things over to Nick Griffin, who is our Facilities Maintenance Department Manager, and he'll share some background and context on that important work. So Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. When we talk about the Flood Control District's preventative maintenance work, we're talking primarily about vegetation management, and there's a lot of work that goes into that year-round. First, let's talk about mowing and the Flood Control District's mowing schedule. As a standard, the Flood Control District uses mowing to control invasive species and prevent trees and other tall vegetation from growing where it shouldn't. Mowing also allows us to better inspect our infrastructure for deficiencies. We mow Flood Control District property 3 times per year on a seasonal cycle. One of the more recent tools in the vegetation management toolbox is selective clearing. Primarily, selective clearing is employed to maintain optimal channel conveyance capacities and also stream bed and environmental integrity within our forested channels. Some great byproducts of selective clearing are promotion of biodiversity and tree canopy growth, thus increasing shade and reducing undesirable species growth. Great care is taken to ensure the most desirable plant and tree species remain in place and native ecological areas have a chance to prosper. In the first image on the left, you can see the before, and in the picture to the right, you can see how it looks after selective clearing has occurred. Another important component of preventative maintenance is what we call invasive species management. Invasive species refers to vegetation or animal species that are not native to the area, and these species can be damaging to natural flood risk reduction properties of our channels. We manage invasive species through a variety of approaches, including targeted herbicide applications and the capture and removal of nuisance animals that damage the systems. Debris management is another critical component of preventative maintenance that keeps our infrastructure working as it should. This picture is a great example of the debris that can accumulate in our channels and in other flood control district infrastructure. Obviously, it's important to keep the stormwater moving through our channels and systems, so we deploy teams to clear debris when it accumulates and impacts the flow of stormwater. In fact, in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl in July, our teams cleared more than 40,000 tons of debris, largely trees and other vegetation, from flood control district channels and rights of way. Let's talk about trees. My department is also charged with hazardous tree removal. I'm sure we're all familiar with the damage fallen trees can do. Fallen and hazardous trees can not only block the flow of stormwater in our channels, but they can also impede our access to those channels so that we can properly maintain them. Our teams remove dead and hazardous trees year-round, and we see an increase in this activity after severe weather events. In some parts of our stormwater management network, we need to lean on water-based operations to access our infrastructure and conduct maintenance. Just as the name implies, this work involves the vegetation management we've talked about, but takes place with equipment actually in or on the water. This requires specialized equipment and operators to ensure we're operating safely and efficiently. The last piece of preventative maintenance I'd like to talk about is what we call fence line pruning. Again, as the name implies, this work involves vegetation management along the fence lines that border our network of channels. Keeping the fences clear of vegetation prevents this vegetation from growing into the channel and impeding the flow of stormwater, and it also allows us better access to the channel for other maintenance and inspection. We would focus this work within flood control district rights of way, and this helps ensure our channels continue to convey stormwater effectively. Now let's move from our preventative maintenance efforts to our forward-looking maintenance efforts. When we talk about the flood control district's forward-looking maintenance efforts, we're looking at what we call nature-based solutions. Picture on the screen illustrates some of what's included in our nature-based solutions efforts, which include programs like wildflower and native grass plantings, tree planting, and sensitive habitat maintenance. These efforts not only produce environmental benefits, but also lower maintenance costs in the long term. The root systems of these native plants help reduce erosion and stormwater runoff. Thanks for letting me share some of my work with you. I'm turning it over now to my colleague, Jason Brock, Maintenance Engineering Department Manager, who will talk a bit more about his area of repair and replace maintenance.
Thanks, Nick. Yes, as Nick said, my department is responsible for what we call repair and replace maintenance. This one is also just what it sounds like, includes the type of maintenance work that repairs and replaces failing infrastructure. These failures can include several things, including the accumulation of sediment in our channels, erosion in our channels, damaged outfall pipes, or failures to the concrete linings of our channels. Most of these failures can be attributed to aging infrastructure and deferred maintenance. Our focus is to keep our infrastructure working as it is intended. I have some before and after photos to illustrate some of our work. This first set shows you the repair of some pretty severe slope erosion in the Greens Bayou watershed. In the first image, you can see the side of the channel has heavily eroded. We built the slope of the channel back as you can see in the second image. And when we do this work, we repair and revegetate the slopes. In this next set, you can see a completed sediment removal project along a channel in the Greens Bayou watershed. We removed sediment along the channel flow line, and in the second image, you can see how conveyance capacity is restored. In fact, we remove about 150,000 cubic yards of sediment annually, which is about 15,000 truckloads. This last set of before and after photos is a great example of repair and replacement of concrete channel lining. In the first picture, you can see the concrete along this section of the channel has completely broken away, which impedes the channel's ability to convey stormwater. In the next picture, you can see how the concrete has been repaired and replaced to return this section of the channel to its intended design. I hope this has given you a good glimpse into the scope of the Flood Control District's repair and replace maintenance work. I'll turn it over now to my colleague, Jeremy Phillips, the Asset Management Division Director, to tell you about our management of citizen service requests.
Thank you, Jason. Hi, everybody. Regardless of the type of maintenance the Flood Control District performs, our crews work hard all year long to identify and prioritize where maintenance is needed. Sometimes, though, residents might see maintenance need before our crews do, and we rely on service requests from the community to help us maintain our channels and infrastructure. Residents can submit service requests to the Flood Control District to alert our crews where maintenance is needed. As of September 2024, we've received almost 2,200 service requests, which will exceed the number we received in 2023. On this slide, you can see the number of service requests we received over the past 6 years, from 1,521 service requests in 2019 to 2,170. This pie chart shows you our top 10 service requests by type since 2019. You can hear the largest category is reports of debris, with 29% of the total service requests. The next 5 highest types of service requests are pretty evenly distributed, with 13, 12, 11, 10, and 9% of requests relating to ponding water, tree-related issues, unauthorized use of flood control district property, erosion, vegetation overgrowth, respectively. We try to make it as easy as possible for residents to submit a service request. Simply go to our website at hcfcd.org/service-request or call our Citizen Service Center during our business hours by dialing 347-286-4197. When you submit a service request, you will receive an email confirmation, and our team will investigate your concern. Once we've identified the issue, we work with our maintenance staff to address it. I'll now turn the presentation back over to Emily.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thanks, Nick and Jason, for all of that great information about your team's work across the organization. So as y'all have seen, the Flood Control District operates a large amount of drainage infrastructure that requires different types of maintenance, and these guys really lead the teams that are doing that work every day. Any increase in maintenance funding would be invested into those categories that we've discussed today, and we can answer your questions about what that looks like. Our mission, just to kind of reiterate, is to make sure that we're planning, building, and maintaining those flood risk reduction projects and keeping our infrastructure effective and reliable as we move forward. So as we wrap up the presentation today and start to transfer into the Q&A, I just want to go back to the impact of Proposition A for homeowners. I think that's a really important topic. So if approved by voters, just as a reminder, this proposition would increase our dedicated tax rate by 1.581 cents per $100 of property valuation. According to our friends over at the Harris County Office of Management and Budget, that's about a $60 per year increase in an overall tax bill. Now, I also want to reiterate that our goal today is not to influence decision-making, but just to make sure that we're sharing information about our maintenance efforts and listening to you on your maintenance priorities. So I would encourage folks to utilize the chat feature, ask us questions. We're happy to clarify anything, but also to just remain engaged on this topic as we move forward. You're able to visit our website at www.hcfcd.org to submit those service requests that Jeremy was talking about. or just engage on other topics. And that really helps us with our decision making.